Welcome. This is the first artist talk on the Lamim Young Patreon virtual class extravaganza fun time explosion in like over a month. It's been a minute, and I'm very, very excited today. We got two legends of their craft with quite the discography behind both of them finally coming together for the first official collaborative work. Yes, I hope I'm right on that. Or at least sort of. Okay, record release of this caliber, we can say.
Yeah.
For sure, we have Dean Spunt and John Wiese, two LA guys. I really wanted to say that. How's it going, guys? Not wrong. Out in the sunshine, fucking Venice Beach, hurrah. I'm just such a asshole Newton, Massachusetts, Boston kid that it was always, it's funny, Dean in particular, I was going to see No Age in like 2008. It was like you guys and Abe Vigoda touring, I think. And I was playing the same night at some little art gallery. I was in high school playing some DIY like little shithole in Cambridge, walking distance from your show at Middle East, and just missed the entire night. So I didn't have the pleasure at, like, that would have been fucking peak that year. Abe Vigoda, No Age. Oh, come on. And John, I haven't had the pleasure of seeing the SpaceX, the great Sissy Spacek project in the flesh, but I'm a Boston boy, then New York.
We'll be there in July.
Well, I'm in Puerto Rico now. I haven't lived in Boston in a minute. It's just where I cut my teeth as a young lad, as a young punk and noise boy. But it was always one of those things, especially just like the forum culture and, like, I called it noise book, like Facebook groups for noise in particular, getting exposed to Sissy Spacek in particular at a, age 16, 15, 16 age was quite the thrill, coming initially from like metal and punk in a more formal childlike innocence and being exposed. I knew what grindcore was. I didn't know like what it could lead to potentially in many ways. But y'all have a record out this week, yeah?
Friday. Dean, yeah.
EP Friday. This Friday, entitled The Echoing Shell, out on Drag City. Classic imprint, friends of the show, friends IRL, etc., etc. And this is a unique duo because, Dean, you have, you're known obviously in No Age behind the drums, and you have this I guess what we would, we have punk at the root, but expanding to so much more behind the skins, behind the set, right behind the drums. And John, you have obviously in a more electronic sort of expertise, this union of sound. We're going to talk about it in detail, but I wanted to start before even allowing y'all to talk about the record, we hear some of it. There's two excerpts that have been released to the public as video clips. And John, did you direct these? It says JW direction?
Yeah.
Nice.
I was the hand behind the videos.
Beautiful. I'm going to just open up my screen and we'll just watch to start, and then we'll talk. Really, even if y'all know No Age and Sissy Spacek individually, this is some unique territory. We can see my YouTube, yeah? Yeah. All right. Can we hear this? Okay, good. All right. This is a brief excerpt from Fruit from Color Vapor, which is first track on a two-sided EP, both songs about 15 minutes, right? Cool. All right, let's take a look. Oh, hell fucking yeah. Absolutely lovely. Just as far as videos go, I mean, like, you know, I'm not going to get into visuals too much, but I mean, I love the humor just in if you don't know, for anybody listening who doesn't know how much I rant and rave against gear porn and like showing off too much, like giving too much away visually as far as like how, you know, what we can see, and this playing very tongue-in-cheek into that with
well, I have a comment about that, but
yes, let's wait. Let's watch just the second clip because they're both only 2 minutes. This is the side B excerpt, Black Fruit. Amazing. Amazing. Short and sweet. Can't get enough of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely lovely. Absolutely lovely. That I think is a, if we had to get 4 minutes or so of auditory and visual information as to what the record is about, you know, what the sound world that we're living in for 30 minutes is like. Those are really two beautiful excerpts there. John, if you want, I mean, you know, you're the video director. I would love your comment that you were going to say earlier, just the tongue in cheekness of the first half.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk a little bit about like this, the idea of like representing what we're doing or how we're making things in a visual sense. I mean, the sound that you hear is actually very like studio produced. It's not exactly something that we played live together, you know, in a conventional way. And I think Dean and I, you know, agreed that it would be nice to, you know, have a correlation between the sounds and the image, but make it a little bit more abstracted or whatever. And you know, we shot Dean's part first in his backyard with all these kind of colorful shapes, and of course his percussion playing is lends itself very much to like this sort of immediate, you know, you can see him hit something, it correlates to a sound, it has a very sort of diegetic quality to it. On the other hand, my sounds are largely like tape and electronic, which as a concept is much more difficult, you know. And so I was thinking, you know, whenever I'm shooting videos for myself or whatever, I always find it very difficult to actually film myself, because you know, it's just a lot easier when you're behind the camera and you can kind of set up a shot and let it play out or whatever. But then when you have to set up a shot that you imagine yourself in, but then get in it, and then, you know, you do a take and it's not right, blah blah blah. So it's kind of struggling with like how to make the equivalent to myself. One idea of which was to you know, take the cue of these colorful shapes of Dean's, and then instead I would just have this black rectangle, you know, in which you only get like the most you know, kind of subtle inclination that like I'm making a motion that's producing a sound.
Yeah.
In fact, none of the sounds were produced with that box, but
yeah.
the
briefcase.
But I like the idea of it being like colorful shapes and then versus like this black rectangle.
Absolutely. It felt like it's a very visual record though. I guess talking about the process, going into this, before we get into like technical signal flow of how we actually produce this, love to hear just a little bit about both of your individual influences coming into a project like this. I mean, Dean, you know, John mentioned, you know, we're, you know, you're a very physical player, you know, and this is more on the arrhythmic and tape music collection and processing of percussion sounds. Was there a precedent for you in working like this? Was there influence of other sort of other drummers or records that utilize percussion in this way going into a project like this?
I'm not sure I knew exactly what our record was going to sound like when we were recording it, so not really. But I will say in No Age, when we make music, there is a sense of, I mean, there's sort of two sides. There's one with, we'll make songs that are kind of structured with guitar and drums, and then another side that's usually pieces cut out from there and samples that what we usually make, and then arrange things. So in that sense, it wasn't too different than what I've done for years, except that the collection of sounds is completely different.
Right.
Yeah, and we basically spent one long day just recording sounds. And I definitely played some things that were really rhythmic and driving. And I guess in the editing process, once Jean was putting things together, I'm sure those things got weeded out.
Well, it's like there are these moments of tempo and pulse, but maybe not necessarily like pattern and like the straight ahead drum equivalent, right? Like it's like one machine, it sounds like. Well, I guess that leads into John. I mean, is this the signal flow? Well, we'll talk technical in a second, but like going into this project, John, like having a background in electronics and signal processing, and power electronics and extreme more extreme improvised music, in a way, was there thoughts ahead of you, or is this still an improvised project going in raw for both of you?
I mean, I think that my approach is kind of like a multi-tiered. It has to do with improvisation on one level, but it doesn't stop there, because I've never really considered myself a musician per se. So when I produce sounds, I almost never make any attempt to produce them in a sort of virtuosic capacity. I'm not trying to play something perfectly. I'm not trying to master, my physical dexterity to play an instrument, for example. But my intent is to produce sounds which I can then take and filter through, 2 or 3 or however many other processes to arrive at something that is very intentional. And I think that would be sort of the my replacement of a musician's virtuosity, for example.
So as studio as instrument in this case,
definitely.
rather than like, because that's why I was asking about like precedent in these collaborative contexts, because listening to this record and thinking about, we have somebody like in this video, we can take like Dean is on drums as represented by the pool furniture, and John is on electronics as represented by Mystery Box. So thinking about other groups that have done, sorry, and palm reading too. Oh, absolutely, yeah, that's right. Like
that
embedded sensor, like filter sensor embedded in the flesh.
More mystical than musician.
Fuck yeah. But it was actually reminding me, thinking if it was a live project, of the work of, like, doesn't sound anything like it, but the work of Alva Noto and Ryuichi Sakamoto. Have you heard their duo records at all? It's, Ryuichi is, very kind of neoclassical, obviously kind of, jazzy minimalist guy on the piano playing into Alva Noto's Super Collider stuff live, and you end up with this one machine of signal flow in a very live sense. And it reminded me of this signal flow here, but which is interesting, it's not live because it still sounds like one process, like two halves, yin and yang in this case. Like it has a live sensibility to it.
I mean, it was I played very much live. I mean, I played drums however long, hours, back and forth, guitar, bass, sampler, various pedals and stuff. So my side of it was, it was live. I mean, I was jamming with a lot of John, listening, recording, direction, changing things up.
I mean, I think that's part of why it does sound like we play together, is because there is, it's not computer music in the sense of like computer generated sounds, but it is like computer facilitated music,
Absolutely.
where the material is something that's more organic,
And I almost imagined when we were recording it, as I was playing parts, I could see you get excited when I did certain things, and you're like, we'd end up like, oh, that was great. So I almost imagine you were creating parts in your head, And
Well,
what
because
to add.
I think like I would take a raw source material and parse it in a particular way and edit it. And I know that like, I know as an editor, I can give some sort of suggestion of like, oh, try and make these kind of sounds, try and do things that are about this length with this much decay. And I know that like, okay, these are action events that I'm going to be using as like cue points to cut and, you know, cut and layer, you know, both this way and this way.
So let me ask then, is this process for Dean as live instrumentalists and John as behind the boards, both of y'all tuned in to each other, hearing everything? John, are you doing something that then Dean can hear in the moment and respond to? Or is it a, let's get raw materials informed by each other, talking to each other, but still just raw takes of everything, and then begin to sculpt post-production?
It was actually more of like a raw concept, and we actually didn't record our material on the same day, so there wasn't you know, this sort of notion of like musical conversation going on. I mean, I think that was more produced in the assembly of the work.
So it was literal communication in this sense, like while Dean, you're recording, and you know, something gets John's interest popping up there, and you're literally like talking about it. It's not like, ooh, let me tweak up the granular here and see what do there. That comes later.
Right.
Fascinating. You know, this is all really interesting because we're in the virtual class, like what this is held for. We're going to be, you know, we do like monthly projects and things like that, like compositional prompts. And to much popular demand, we're going to start a collaborative kind of like band or duo bingo project where like virtually people are paired together or potentially trioed together, and thinking about how one can work in pieces in collaboration. This is fascinating, you know?
To that end, most of the scores on like scores for ensemble that I've made, almost in every case, one of the first rules is that I don't want the players to play with each other or against each other or in conversation with each other. They just follow the score. They play on their own linear path, and the sound, you know, and it's set up in such a way that the sounds will ebb and flow and interact with each other. But when you have musicians getting into this idea of like a musical conversation, a sort of back and forth or whatever, I think it's very hard to produce something outside of that type of result. You know, like you really have to break that to get something completely different, in my experience.
It's very much like, it's reminding me of Brian Eno's like philosophy, studio as instrument again, like, you know, the everything in individual stems can become its own universe potentially, but should be individually heard and potentially produced, rather than this band live multi-tracking traditionally recorded situation. I mean, Dean, does No Age, and you were talking about this earlier, like, you know, the kind of two halves of your process in a proper band, like sometimes it's very straight ahead musical, you know, like, you know, in duo, but other times it may be more hands-on self-sampling approach. Is this something that you have, I guess, an ear and experience for from the technological side? Like, are you, as a producer of your own music, involved in this side of this project? You know, in relation to other stuff, like, are you producing? Are you working in the behind the boards and stuff?
Well, specifically in No Age, Randy is usually the one that is engineering the records if we're doing the recordings ourselves. But my role has been usually to make we both will produce sounds, but I'm more of I guess in that way, producer. I can kind of stand over him while he's twisting knobs and just make suggestions.
Executive
Yeah,
producer.
yeah. When Randy's really technical, I'm not that technical, and I don't like. I'm not interested in doing that, but I do have I think an ear for moving things in directions that feel like I don't know, fucked up sometimes.
Do you guys does No Age record in a professional studio much anymore?
The last two
Do you have
records, we recorded ourselves, and then every record we've always had half of the record we recorded ourselves at least. But no, I mean, no, in this last record that's going to come out, well, it's not announced yet, but anyway, then a record we
NDA.
yeah, never mind. I don't know. No, not really. We've sort of, because Randy's been really into getting really into that side of making music, and at least like producing it and getting the gear and obsessing about microphones and these kind of things. We've just been able to do it ourselves.
Yeah, it seems like at this point in history, that would be the way to go.
Yeah, I think so too. Especially, and our approach has changed too, where it feels a bit more, I mean, unique to. It's similar to this process in a way where it's like we're making sounds almost separate, but then together, and they're all kind of being pulled out and pushed, and then taken out, and then resampled, and then cut up. So, yeah, I don't know how you would do that. Like with it, you'd pay for that process with an engineer or something.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
Yeah, it sounds painstaking. Like talk about like executive, like engineer, like explaining how to do that to a
and I think yeah, when we've made records in the past and there was a bit more money for a budget, or we'd record with a studio, even that impulse to move things around and to like at the last minute take something out and add something else, I think it frustrates engineers. And
for sure,
like, it sounds fine. I'm like, well, why don't we just do this and remove the drums, the whole thing? And it's just
goddamn noise musicians,
right? It just becomes a constant stress, So
yeah, sounds like this project then is a very natural, workflow for you, Dean, as far as like, I mean, it's working in duo. Both of y'all work in duo a lot. I mean, like Sissy Spacek, it's you and the other member again. I forgot their name. Charlie, right? Yeah, y'all are the main, and rotating assembly of noise mercenaries joining this tour you got going on. It's a rotating cast, right? But primarily, and No Age, obviously the core duo there. Is there something to be said about this yin and yang, not going beyond two collaborators, potentially just in the studio, being the real ideas complementing each other? Or do you feel like it risks being diluted when we democratize into quartets and quintets, right? I mean, band politics, that's a fucking thing,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I enjoy large groups. I think it's a different result, but there is a certain like economy to just working with one other person. And for me, it's more about the just the sort of impetus of having another person there, like if you look at my work, I actually don't produce that many solo albums. I mean, I'm recording stuff all the time.
Yeah.
But it's just mentally, it's just a very different thing to produce something that's just yourself. And what I have found over time is that it's more satisfying to try to just reduce your ego in a sense, not in a negative sense, but reduce your ego to meet with someone and produce something and actually put as much of yourself earnestly into it, knowing that it's not, it's reflecting on both of you, you know.
Right.
Um,
Allowing another set of ears in on the process, because it's like, why isolate yourself potentially in this, like, you know, it will benefit the project, right? You
Yeah.
know, like allowing that other set in there. Dean,
I think,
you respond.
yeah, I think it's all, I mean, I was going to say the same thing. It's just, it's efficient with two people, and it's easy. You know, if one person says no to something, it's like, okay, no's the answer. You know, I think when you have a group of 3 or 4 or 5, it drags on, and there's a much more discussion to be had about certain decisions. So, and also, yeah, I mean, working by yourself, which I've done very frequently, but it can be isolating, and like, you know, not having a sounding board. And John and I's case, we're friends, so I think that sharing of ideas and sharing of things that we relate up on really helps the process. And I think when I try to make stuff on my own, you know, it's like, I don't know when to start or stop, just kind of keeps going.
I think also when you get into like the larger groups, I mean, my experience in working with very large groups, like, you know, 10 or 20 people or something like that, is always in the realm of like having some sort of composition or something, to which it's really more of like a dictatorship than a democracy. I mean, there is democratic elements to it, you know. Generally in my scores, people have a lot of freedom to play the sounds that they want to play within the structure of it. But it just seems like, yeah, when you get past a certain point, having everybody be an equal say is just sort of like a mess. It's sort of a nightmare, you know?
Right. Yeah, it's like I mean, that's the classical Western like hegemonic like relationship, right? It's always dictatorial, whether it's composer or conductor of these types of things. But I guess it depends on the music in 20th and 21st century composition. The question of freedom and collaboration in these larger settings becomes that much more case per case and about communication, right? I mean, John, I mean, you know, like talk about like harsh noise and free improv groups. I mean, like if you give a quintet of fresh people, like you just say, like, we're just going to play at this noise festival. I mean, like how often or not is it going to be like a wall, right? Like it's like indistinguishable chaos happening, because it's the vibe in the now, right? It's the energy of the show, but that might not be the nuanced approach that you might have wanted to take, right?
Right. Almost all of my scores primarily deal with forcing the players to stop playing. Like at every point in the score, it's always about them stopping. And that's
stop.
Yeah.
Stop. I do appreciate in our record how much silence there is.
Literally, I wrote that down, underlined,
Oh, yeah.
Underlined here. Could we talk about that? Noise, undercase noise versus silence on this record, because it's space, right? I mean, Dean, when you play, maybe not in like patterns way, but if we were to if you were tasking yourself with textural percussion, you know, the moments of rolls and, you know, like clicks of the sticks and things like that, how often do you breathe in the raw recordings before moving on? How much space do you give yourself live versus the studio illusion?
Well, hold on 1 second. Let's shut the door.
Oh my God.
My recollection of our recording session where the drums were recorded was that I mean, you know, it like the scores that were just mentioned. I mean, I felt like I tried to convey to Dean a lot about like play individual events, you know, with separated events, like almost sound effects or something, so that, you know, they can be used as these little elements that can be used, you know, and it's not necessarily about a flow of live playing.
Yeah, I don't use negative space as much as I would like to, or I think
like on mono no aware,
well, like live too, I feel there's always a sense. I don't really get nervous when I play, but it always feels like you're there, you want to present something, and just the way that usually when I'm playing, usually my shows are with No Age, so it's like we'll play songs and then we have such a textural element between songs too that there's not a lot of hard stops. We might do 6 tracks in a row with sound in between, and that's just because we're like trying to just get through songs and play. And as I've gotten older, I've appreciated this sense of like, I'm going to own this space, I'm going to sit here, it can be quiet, and there can be empty space, but it takes a long, that's an uncomfortable, it's an uncomfortable space to utilize, and
right?
Especially for audience and for performer. So like, it's nice to lean into it. This doesn't feel uncomfortable on the record, but I guess I'm just thinking of in a live setting where it forces people to, it takes them out of the environment and it makes them go, oh, what am I doing? Or can people, this person's not saying anything. Now I'm recognizing the room around me. And I've always spent, I guess, years pummeling that, but I now can look at it as a useful tool.
It seems like this is perfect for a studio process because, like John, like you said, like a lot of this was like sample packing, like sound effects making, like where it's like each idea can be like individually thought out, played, stop, move on into something else. But like going off what you said, Dean, like that's a vulnerable position to be in, that if you were to do that live, there would be this like reading of audience, like, it's because it is kind of like calling and responding of your process. I'm trying to think like how, if you were to do this live, have you thought about this at all as a duo?
We have a show coming up at Human Resources on the 30th in Los Angeles. And I think what we're going to do is kind of present it a little bit kind of as a performance, but also a little bit as an installation. I'm going to, I think it's going to be like the elements of the record are going to be presented in sort of like a nonlinear multi-channel diffusion. We're hoping 6 or 8 speakers. And then we need to figure it out exactly, but maybe there'll be some live percussion or something kind of affected. And then I also made a straight tape piece that's a video with 2 tape machines using the same source material, but the effect is quite different. And I think we'll present that video before the installation as well.
Fantastic.
So yeah, I mean, we're not, I think we're like, we don't need to make another band. Dean already has No Age. Like what?
Right.
Like there's no, I don't think there's any like need for me to pick up an instrument and Dean and I to like jam or something.
I was hoping you'd play guitar, dog.
Yeah, come on, Freebird.
I refuse. I will not.
Do some pig squealing. Bring out. It's what we all came for.
So I am in a band, and that's what I mean with the negative space is like, because I'm primarily playing in rock clubs to people who are rock like fans. I think that in the world that this record inhabits or that John frequents, it's like I think that space is welcomed. That negativeness is welcomed, and then the non-sound world or non-sound is welcome almost. But yeah, I think like in our performance, it's not much of an issue. I think all that space is totally welcomed.
It's interesting you say that, because I mean, people are so interchangeable with like terminologies of punk, metal, noise, sound, art, composition. Like there are lines that electroacoustic or like tape music, there are these lines that blur, and sometimes it's like just the presentation context that determines like what is an installation versus like a harsh noise performance, you know, in certain things. And I guess depending, I mean, John, I mean, like Sissy Spacek got called like best punk band in LA a couple of years ago, right? I mean, like,
Yeah.
what's up with that? Like, you know, like what?
That's just good reporting.
That's just good reporting. I was gonna
Yeah.
say, like, how important are these distinctions when sound is sound and texture is texture, percussion, noise, these things can be removed of genre and presented in different ways. Because I hear this record, there are elements of a harsh noise record at some points, but to me, this is just as like punk and free improv, even as a studio collage, you know, like how do you guys perceive this?
I mean, I think it's, you know, it's 2022, you know, like how, you know, you could do one simple thing, or you could do this. I mean, I think you could do something that's a little bit more ambitious and less pigeonholed, something that's more multi-layered. You know, I think our record is an improv record. It's a tape music record. It's computer music record. It's a drum and electronics dub album. It's,
Yeah.
you know, I mean, like it's every, you know, it's all of the above.
I love that. The
Pop
yeah,
record.
maybe. It's a
Yeah,
pop record.
Yeah.
It's a
It's got
pop
some
record.
bass lines in it.
It's blues, rhythm and blues. I mean, do you think that, have you had any experience of like with either the no age crowd, Dean, or with the Sissy Spacek crowd, like pushback of doing weirder things? Because I mean, people pigeonhole you all the time, you know, like there's no, you can't control that if you wanted to do like something more experimental off the, you know, what is expected of you that evening on tour, does that become a challenge to not reinvent, but to continue to push envelopes when people expect something from you?
I mean, that happened to us all the
Yeah.
time, and
Yeah.
especially early on until we sort of got discouraged from doing this. But we would frequently just play as guitar, and I wouldn't play drums, and I would just play samples and electronics. But you could see how once the popularity of the records and certain songs got high, got, you know, more plays, or more people were interested in that stuff, like people were not happy when we'd show up and like, oh, I'm not playing drums tonight. Oh, where's that song? Like, I don't know. But it like that, we basically weaned that out a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we don't really do much improvisation. It's like we'll have a set that will do the whole tour, and then there'll be moments where we can jam off. But yeah, I mean, I've sort of realized I save that stuff for my own, because our crowd sometimes they don't want to freak out.
Right. But even with noise crowds, John, I mean, like they could be just as purist too, no?
Yeah, I mean, I think Sissy Spacek has gone the opposite route. We've made it a point to like be willing to alienate everybody at every stage. You know, I mean, I think in a sense, the most conventional thing we've done is like do sort of like a noise grind album on Nuclear War Now. I mean, that's the most sort of like genre thing that we've ever done. Yeah. Even though I don't think that we you know, our prescription genre in that case either. But I mean, typically whenever we've released like a grindcore album, we'll simultaneously release like a noise and like an improv album at the same time, just because we always want to you know, push this idea that we're not one thing, we're not going to be one thing. And you know, I mean,
Off camera.
it's
Frozen.
John, you there?
concept.
Frozen.
I am.
Oh, you're back.
Okay.
Back.
Back. Okay.
Yeah, you're back.
Okay. I think. Yeah, I just, you know, I think that it's just a lot more interesting to risk losing everybody every time, you know. And there's no, I mean, there's what's really the consequence? You know, we're not erecting buildings here, or like, you know, if it falls down, it doesn't matter, you
Don't
know.
sell yourself short.
Well, I think in our case, in the No Age case, you know, we're in the cycle of rock albums and touring. You're expected to perform this song, and like we make songs, so
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily that the fans don't want to hear us experiment or hear that kind of music or those sounds, because John's toured with us before, and I always felt like he's performed, people were really interested in it, and you got really good response, I think. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that, but then, you know, it's like just enough, and then they want to see us do the thing from the thing. It's
Right.
part of the culture, you know, like I don't, you know, you want to hear that version, or a close version of stuff that's on a record. I don't know if it
Yeah.
translates in John's world so much, but
I had no idea you got that, John, you had played with No Age before. Was that part of the No Age like live experience, like expanded ensemble?
No. I opened for No
Oh,
Age
okay, gotcha.
on a couple tours. I think maybe some in the US, definitely in Europe.
Yeah.
And
we did jam
I
together.
mean,
There's a tape.
yeah, we made a tape, which I believe was recorded in Glasgow, where we did like a 10 or 15-minute collaboration as like an opener to their set as well.
Oh, sick. So that's the official first collaboration release.
Well, maybe Dean's old band Wives. I made like a remix for a 12-inch that came out. That was probably the first thing.
Gotcha.
I think so. Yeah.
Gotcha.
But anyway, yeah, he's played with us before.
No, I could just, I mean, like, that's the question of playing towards what people expect or want versus what you guys are trying to do. I mean, I guess it depends on the context of things, but like, yeah, you see it more maybe in bands with songs versus I don't know. I mean, I've been to harsh noise festivals where like somebody is playing like techno, or someone is playing something that has like melody, like, you know, like harmony or something in there, and it's like, you know, clearing the room at the most ironic way, right? You know, I feel like every scene kind of has their own sort of conservatism, right? And, you know, like noise rock, indie rock, harsh noise, they all can put up their walls at some point. Maybe Sissy Spacek just is always the enigma to that in different ways. I don't know.
We'd like to be.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
You'd like to be on Enigma Records.
I guess just a couple last things here, just, you know, going on talking about collaboration, right? And this being a classroom sort of setting here, music educational setting here, you know, is there words of wisdom, being that both of y'all have a lot of experience working in duo and collaboration with at least another partner, you know, how to communicate ideas from scratch with each other? Like, how, if one were to just walk into a studio with someone, like how would you begin that process? Because I think a lot of people, you know, there's a vulnerability in making improvised music or having a blank slate and working with a partner. Is there, you know, method to the madness that works for either of you individually? Is there something that clicked for you guys in this project that you think you know, is worth sharing? That's a tough question.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if you you know, a good way to break the ice would be to maybe make a soup together first, like pick out some vegetables and cut it and make a thing, and then that's a good way to sort of figure out the needs and wants of someone, and then how you put it all together, and then from that point move on to figuring out how to make sounds together, because then the ice would be broken and you'd be fed. And
you're talking literal food and analogy here, because it would be good. It's good to start on a not on an empty stomach in the studio. I don't
I
like
think, yeah.
working. I don't like working hungry. But also, like, what if it was just like a jam, making a gumbo, right? You know, like literally like going in
Well, it's
and
the
just,
same, it's the same kind of idea if you're making food with someone. I'm
yeah.
just trying to think of a way that you're talking about walking into a studio with someone, but like that's daunting. I mean, I guess it's someone you know. It would have to be someone, or if you're talking about someone you don't know, but
No,
still
no,
like,
someone you know. I mean, I'm not saying like being prompted in this, but like, all right, like we finally got a time, like me and you, we've been talking about doing this for a while. Let's fucking, all right, let's go. What do
I
we
mean,
do? You know?
I think the idea of walking into the studio is a space where you should just explore and not worry about the result, because the result might be amazing, it might not be amazing, but you'll know after you do it. And
Yeah.
so you know don't work on the clock, and just explore. I think that's like the healthiest thing you could do, and just see what you can produce, because you don't have to do anything with it. Like,
Mm.
you can try a million things, and maybe a couple of them will be great, and throw everything else away and move forward. And then now you have a context.
Right.
Now you have like all these things that you tried. Some were successful, some weren't successful. You now have a context with which to assess. And then from there, what else you do, to the point where you are booking your show and going on tour or whatever. Like that's stage, that's stage 5. Like, once you've produced something worth sharing, then share it, and then figure out what you do with it then.
I mean, that's how we went into this too.
Yeah.
I mean, we
Is
like,
there a plan, right? Like, did y'all have like any idea what it would be?
no,
I mean,
I don't,
aside from like
your editing techniques.
yeah,
maybe.
my sort of working process, what was going to happen within that, no, we had no idea.
And I'm like, I'm playing guitar, there's bass, there's guitar, there's like samples of punk records. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff on there. So but that's a good point. I mean, I think I went into it thinking that like perhaps nothing would come out of it too. And if anything, we're just hanging out and making sounds and trying stuff, and maybe that would lead to something else if we didn't get anything that was worthwhile.
Yeah, I mean, the best, I always feel like producing work is like a great thing for friends to do. Like, what better project than to just like try and make something and have fun, just have like a good experience doing it. And again, if it's successful, great. If it's not successful, great.
But the soup works in the same way, right?
Yeah, I
Put
love
two in-
that. Oh man, that's mwah.
You've never
That's
made me soup.
I never have. Come on. Come on.
Burritos. What about burritos? Come on, Dean.
I'm selling burritos. I'm selling burritos at the Smell on Wednesday.
The literal
Yeah.
chef here. The literal chef here going to LA DIY punk
$5.
legendary spot to sell the
I'll give you 4.
secret recipe. So I'll give you 4.
Deal.
This is a politics of Mexican food in California. It's not something I will even as a Yankee northeastern boy, I'm not even going to attempt to weigh in on here. That's beautiful though. I really appreciate your leaving it on this sentiment here, and the food analogy too, because it's like, yeah, like it's healing to make food for each other, to just hang out and do this, right? Like, when you let your inhibitions down of like, we got to make this record, it's like, nah, like we're gonna like, it's fun to play music and make and record with your friends, and something more than often than not, like it has an organic kind of way of becoming something larger when you're not thinking about it in some big picture way right at the moment, right? That's great. You know, I think everybody should learn from that, because collaboration is key. We do better power in numbers, right? Like y'all said, like just being able to have another set of ears to work off of. Really beautiful stuff. Thank you guys so much for hanging. I want to open the chat here. If anybody wants to queue for an A, if anybody wants to ask any questions here to Dean or John related to the record, related to individual projects, related to sound in general, please feel free to ask away in the chat or raise your hand with the little hand raisey thing. Give it a minute. I was going to ask one more question. This is my new thing I want to start doing to close. Get like one answer, one sentence answers from each of you for this. You ready? I'm going to start doing this for everybody on this show. Ready? Yeah. Why music? One sentence answers. Who's ready?
I never said it was music.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer.
For me, well, one sentence, because for me, it cannot be anything else.
Beautiful. Beautiful. This is going to be my new thing. Just going to like throw this at the end for everybody on the podcast, because it's I think a question that we should all think about. And if it's not music, okay, John, why vibrating oxygen sound?
I have a problem with the premise of the question. I don't think that it is to be questioned.
Okay. I love it. I love it. That's great. There's no, it's I've said to people, someone asked me this, and that's actually sparked why I'm doing this now for everybody else. But to me, I was like, it's like water, like which is like, don't question, like there's no question, like you need water to live. You don't think about it. That's more than one sentence, but you know, I actually, I see a lot of correlation to your answer there, John. But we're gonna leave it at one sentence. Doesn't look like we have any Q&A. That's totally fine. It's fine. People be shy. People be shy. Well, thank you both for hanging and chatting with me this hour. Everybody, please, this Friday, it's on Dean's Bandcamp. Yes, that's the
also mine.
Also, you okay, cool. Everybody gets it co-posted, and Drag Cities as well, which is, I'm just gonna read the URLs. Deanspunt.bandcamp.com. John, what's your URL?
John Wiese.
johnwiese.bandcamp.com for Friday. dragcity.com is the label. Go there, get vinyl. We getting vinyl releases. We doing a little run.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
It's all
Oh yeah. Awesome.
Shout out to Drag City too, because
yes, big time.
Thank
Big
you.
time. Shout outs to Drag City. Great guys, friends of the pod. What I was joking at the beginning of this is that I'll just get emails from Drag City and they're like, yo, you gonna like this? Y'all want them on the pod? And I'm like, yes, I sure do. They just, you know, perks of a meme page. I guess that's it. Thank you guys. Have a great evening.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mac.
Yeah, thank you.
Bye guys. Take
Thanks,
care.
Bye.
See ya.